Hey, this is Ars Payne with Role Playing Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 173, the Alien RPG Breakdown, where we're going to be, breaking down the brand new Alien RPG from the Free League, a group of Swedish developers who have gotten the license for, yes, Alien, the whole xenomorph cornucopia of acidic blood, goodness or something like that.
Black goo.
Yeah, goo. And with me is Birk.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Also, this music for you heard the intro is actually from Music D20, Patreon for music that you can get for your. It's a library of tracks you can put into Roll20 and that kind of thing. And there are new tracks every month. So we've also been putting them on some of our After Hours episodes. But yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes. It's patreon.com/musicd20. Yeah, if you like it, back the Music D20. But before we begin with the topic of talking about Alien RPG, we have an announcement. Birk and I have actually been working on a new podcast. This will be a free podcast called Night Clerk Radio, Haunted Music Reviews. This is going to be about reviewing Vaporwave, Dark Ambient, Dungeon Synth, and also talking about the theoretical topics behind it, like plunderphonics, hauntology, and a lot of other fun stuff. So if you like weird music or you want to learn more about weird music, that is these sort of weird subgenres that are popping up all over Bandcamp and the SoundCloud and other, little known corners of the internet.
Mm-hmm. If you want to dig into some weird niche internet shit.
Yeah. So we'll be explaining this is where neither of us are like experts in music in terms of like being professional music reviewers. So we're just going to be sort of explaining it from the ground up as we're learning about it as we do the podcast.
Yeah. It's been a great learning experience. It's actually been really fun.
Learning to talk about music.
Yep.
There's this whole quote about writing about music is like dancing about architecture. And I'm like, all right, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. So we will launch it sometime in the first quarter of 2020. We're not sure. We've already started recording episodes. And we will have more details as we come out with them, including little teasers and whatnot. But I just want to get you all to know that's one of the things I've been working on the last couple of months. And with Birk, because Birk's also really into Vaporwave.
That's right.
So even if you haven't listened to Vaporwave, even if you don't know what Vaporwave is, if you've ever listened to things like the Silent Hill 2 soundtrack, the Avalanches, DJ Shadow, the little music clips they play in interstitials for Toonami, you would probably like it.
The Weather Channel,
big influence there. And we will go into everything from Mallsoft to future funk. Well, probably future funk will probably wait a while, but definitely dark jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Not just Vaporwave. Like I said, it's haunted music because we live in an age where we're haunted by the past and alternate futures. And what does that even mean? Well, you'll have to listen to Night Clerk Radio. So if you want to ask us questions already, we have a Twitter account set up at Night Clerk Radio. That's something I'm really excited about. Birk, anything else you want to mention about it?
No, I think it's just been really exciting. Like I said, just learning about all these different subgenres because I'm not like into as dark ambient as you are. So getting to talk about that's been really fun. We did a topic episode where we kind of just dug deep into one of sort of the foundational just theory topics behind Vaporwave. And that was really interesting. So I think there's a lot of good stuff to listen to. So I'm excited to launch it.
Yeah, if you're the kind of person who's like wants to listen to new music, kind of interested in this, we'll be reviewing most episodes 2 albums and with links and clips so you can sort of get a sense of what the album's like. And so it's a way to expand your musical horizons. We should get on with the actual episode. So Alien, it's in RPG form now.
It's back.
Yeah, it's back. I mean, it's a very storied franchise of movies, and of course, there's the extended universe of the Dark Horse comics, numerous video games, novels.
I assume at some point Disney will buy that and wipe that out.
Don't they technically already own it? I mean, isn't this 20th Century Fox?
Oh my God, you're right. Dino Morse will appear in Avengers 5.
Oh Jesus. The darkest timeline. I mean, they already... Well, I have opinions about Covenant, but and Prometheus. So, I mean, I don't know what more damage they could do. But this was not kickstarted, but the Free League, which is a Swedish company of RPG developers who have put out Tales from the Loop, which we've, of course, done numerous episodes of on RPPR Actual Play. Also Mutant Year Zero, which we've done a one-shot or two.
Coriolis, which is like a sci-fi RPG.
Couple other games too. I think Forbidden Lands as well. So They all use this similar system, all based on rolling pools of D6s, and with variants for each sort of setting to sort of make it more applicable. And Alien is a real interesting way to do a licensed game, because they don't take every single. Obviously, they don't do Alien Resurrection as sort of like a canon yet, because Alien Resurrection, spoiler alert for a 10-year-old movie at this point, ends with Earth being destroyed. So Earth's still around.
Alternate timeline.
Yeah, alternate timeline. It starts out sometime after Alien 3. Also material from Prometheus and Covenant is canon in the RPG. And by the way, this episode will have spoilers for not only the RPG, but also the adventure Chariot of the Gods, because I did run that adventure for RPPR, and we will have an actual play recording of it up at some point. But I was really interested in sort of doing a breakdown / analysis of the system and game. And Birk was also interested in it.
Yeah, I just love Alien as a franchise.
Also, a note of disclosure, I did get a review copy of this game from Free League, including the game itself, Charity of the Gods, the GM screen, dice, cards, and a map with cardboard little tokens you could use to move around things, which I did not use, but it looks neat. So
I didn't get any of that, so just listen to me.
Yeah, all right. So Birk, what are your overall thoughts on it?
I do like it. Just to get that out of the way, like you said, it's set a few years after Alien 3. I like that it tries to be a franchise game, and at first I was concerned there'd be just a lot of fan service and not much like in the way of new ideas, which it kind of does. Some of the classes are ones you'd expect, and we'll talk about Chariot of the Gods more, but it's sort of like on a not Nostromo type ship. But overall, I think that I really like that they took the idea of the Alien universe and sort of expanded it out into something richer than just sort of what you see in the movies, because it has just for background, it has two modes of play. One that it calls campaign, which is designed to be like your standard RPG campaign, and one that's cinematic, which is like a little more deadly, a little more PvP, a little more just trying to recreate an Alien movie.
Yeah, this is the con game / one shot. Charity of the Gods is a cinematic play scenario. I did read somewhere in one of the press releases that they plan to release a bunch of these cinematic play scenarios as support for the game.
Yeah, they're all designed to be played in about 4 hours, which hint is about a Gen Con game block, right?
Yeah.
So they know what they're doing there. But I think the campaign stuff is actually more interesting in a lot of ways, because it gets into a lot of like intercorporate politics where you don't have that in a lot of the media, and like exploring the outer reaches, how players interact, and there's more cults and faith and sort of interacting with aliens in other ways, other than just being like stranded somewhere and fighting a single xenomorph, which I really liked.
Yeah, I did like the cult stuff. I'm gonna have to rewatch Alien 3 at some point to see, because I remember they were like religious prisoners, or there was some sort of so I wanted to see what they kind of do with that. So yeah, no, there's a lot of real good world building in it, that they also explain the mechanics of FTL travel, which are never explained in any of the movies really, which I like, and a lot of the political stuff in terms of what governments are available. I kind of was expecting, like, I don't know if you know this, but in the original Alien, the production designers for the movie actually came up with this visual language for all the sets, like all the iconography that you see stenciled on the walls of the Nostromo are all like supposed to like be future hazard symbols or future like technical symbols. Like, oh, it's this kind of door, this is an airlock, or this is not an airlock, or whatever. I was kind of expecting, because that's sort of, I would figure, be low hanging fruit for the franchisee to grab and pad a couple pages up, but I didn't see that.
It's a GM's guide.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, why would you put it all in the main book when you have supplements to do? So I am going to be interested too, because I don't know if this uses Alien Isolation as canon or not, or if that they have access to that stuff, because I haven't played Alien Isolation, but I hear it adds some interesting new twists or a couple of interesting ideas.
Isolation is really good. It would be before this, because Isolation, if I remember correctly, is set while Ripley is floating through space before she's found in Aliens. So it would be before this, but there's no reason that if they have access to that they couldn't use it.
Because Charity of the Gods definitely uses stuff from Prometheus, which again I didn't look too carefully to see where that lines up with Alien and Aliens in terms of the timeline. They actually made the stuff from Prometheus scary again, or scary at all, which was good for them. But before we get, I guess, too much into this, we should talk about the game mechanics itself.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I got off topic.
No, I mean, it's trying to provide an overview. So The overall system is rolling a pool of d6s. You have every character has attributes, and then you also have skills. Now, all of these games, free league games, have like 12 skills. There's a very limited skill set, and that covers everything. And which is fun because it's a very focused game about, doing sci-fi things. And so like operate machinery or heavy machinery or whatever it's called is a very important skill and came up quite a bit. So I'm personally very satisfied by that.
Wow.
So if your attribute is 2 and your skill is 3, you'd roll 5d6. And if any of them come up 6s, you succeed. Otherwise, you fail. Now, if you fail, you can push the roll, which means you get to roll again. But if you do that, you add a point of stress. And there are other ways to gain stress. There are a lot of ways to gain stress.
The thing is that like pushing the roll also makes it not just give stress, but makes it easier to succeed because you get an extra die that's like a stress die.
Yeah, you get to roll the stress die. So actually, as your character gets more stressed out, they're more focused, more alert, and they are actually better at things. The downside with stress is you actually have to roll them with a different color d6s. I actually got they have special d6s for these, but obviously you can use whatever. The regular ones are black, and the yellow ones are the stress dice. And if you roll a 1 on those stress dice, that means you have to make a panic roll where you take your current level stress, which is from 1 to 10, and then you add a d6 roll to it. And then you consult a table. If it's 7 or less, you're fine. But from 8 on to 15 plus, bad things happen. Actually, 7 I think is okay-ish. You just gain a point of stress. So basically, what happens? There is this sort of like stress spiral. As you get more and more stressed out, you get more and more stressed out because you keep making panic rolls, and most of those add more stress to you, even if they don't do other things. Now, panic rolls are brief. Like whatever the result is, it only lasts 1 turn in combat. So if you freeze or you drop an item, that's it. You're not out of the entire combat. It's an interesting dynamic, and the players really liked it in my experience when we were doing Chariot of the Gods. They really liked that dynamic. In fact, early on, they started wanting to get stressed so they could roll more dice.
Yep.
But then once they got to like 4 to 5 stress dice, they're like, ooh. But and there are ways to heal stress, obviously, but like players didn't really seek that out as much. Like I told them, if you rest every 10 minutes, you lose a point. We're like, okay, we'll rest for like 10 minutes. Okay, you lose 1 point. Okay, let's go. Okay.
Go push my next roll.
Yep. All right. That's fine. So in opposed rolls like combat, it's whoever gets the most successes. If it's tied, ties go to the defenders. And interestingly enough, there's no way to dodge ranged attack. You can see cover, but that's about it. But you can only block xenomorph attacks with if you're holding something, like, so you cannot block them unarmed, which, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's the basic mechanic. And obviously characters have various talents that they can use to do certain things. There are a lot of edge cases, which we'll get into in a little bit, but that's the core mechanic, and that was pretty easy for me to keep a handle of. Characters also have very little health. Their health it's their strength rating usually. They have like 3 hit points. Most weapons do a fixed amount of damage, so it's like 1 plus every success you get over the first. So if you rolled 2 successes and you shot somebody with a pistol, that would do 2 points of damage, 1 for the pistol and then 1 for the second success.
Right.
But if you have 3 hit points, that's still a lot of damage. And when you get down to 0, though, you're broken, which means you have to make a roll on the critical hit table, and then you're still broken. If no one heals you, you will die eventually. But like if someone can first aid you back, you can hobble around with 1 health. But like if you roll really bad on the critical hit table, which is a D66 table, you're just you're donezo. A 66 is like your head explodes or something.
Yeah. It's like your aorta pops and all this stuff. It's
I didn't look at character creation very much because obviously I was doing the Chariot of the Gods. Did you look at that?
I did. Yeah. So character creation is real straightforward, which they sort of say that in all the cinematic stuff, you'll just have pre-gens. But I think character creation is so straightforward. You could just do it for basically any game in a few minutes, outside of however long your group normally likes to have a session 0 type thing to talk about stuff. But it's really straightforward. You pick a career, which is stuff like roughnecks, which would be like Harry Dean Stanton and Yaphet Kotto in Alien, the people that repair the ship. There's corporate people, there's cops, there's like corporate marshals or like colony marshals. They're kind of like colony sheriffs. There's pilots. You just pick that, and then you distribute a certain number of points among your 4 stats, and then a certain number of points among your skills. You pick a talent. You pick your little signature item, because every character is supposed to have like a little thing that means something to them. And then, you can also be like a kid. If you want to be like a newt type, scientist, officer, etc. And I think I could make a bunch of characters for like a game in probably 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's definitely a strength of the system because characters can go down very quickly, as we found out in the second half of Chariot of the Gods. More than one player had to like pick up one of the NPCs to play so they wouldn't be sitting for the last hour or something like that.
Yeah, and I think you should expect to die in an Alien game, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just comes with the genre.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's great. There's rules. Everyone is a human. There are rules with GM permission if somebody wants to be a synthetic.
Yeah. So huge spoiler for Chariot of the Gods. One of the players is a secret android, and you get to assign that to any of the pre-gens. It's just, and so I had Tom be the secret android. He of course loved being the secret android, but he actually pretended like he had stress for the first half of the scenario.
You're supposed to, like, you hide it by just behaving like a human.
And I really like that bit. But like, as soon as he's like, yeah, no, we should do a blood test to see if you're infected. It's like, I'm definitely not infected. It's like, no, we really, it's like, let me show you what, let me prove. Oh, white blood. Okay. Yeah. I guess you're not infected. So that was a fun scene.
Nice.
The one thing I also like that I realized is they have a bunch of pre-gens, but none of them are the actual characters from the movies. It's very typical for a licensed RPG. Like, oh, here's Ripley's stats. Here's all these other characters.
Luke Skywalker has 14 strength.
Yeah, exactly. So you can do these games without like having, if you want to have Ripley in the game, you have to stat her out yourself, which I think is good because, if you're the typical thing is like, oh, well, these characters in the movies are so much more badass than you. So like we made them with special rules. So
one way you can definitely tell the characters are not supposed to survive very long is there's not a lot of rules for leveling up.
Yeah. I think, I didn't even bother because again, Chariot of the Gods is also a scenario where there's not really a way to, well, there might be a way to escape, but it's the odds are not good. Now there are some things about the rules I didn't really super like the stealth rules. I didn't really like. They have special stealth rules where enemies are in active or passive mode.
Yeah, they're trying to capture, I think, that tense of like, oh, there's something on the motion tracker. Where is it? It didn't really work for me.
No, it didn't. I didn't really use it. I just kept with standard observation versus, mobility is your running and sneaking skill. So I used, typical observation versus mobility checks.
Yeah. And you could just do without, it doesn't need to be like mechanically encoded if you just want to have a tense scene of something on the player's motion tracker. You can just do that.
I mean, if they made it more complex and made it more like an alternative to combat where it's like a full system, that would be fine. But like the one page system as it is kind of like, it's also not well written, like that part. I didn't really understand what they're trying to do.
A lot of this book is very terse and has not very much in the way of text.
There are generous margins.
Yes. But to your point, I think my main problem is if there were too many more rules, then it almost just kind of becomes the Alien board game.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fair. Like, if you're doing like stealth on a tabletop RPG is really hard to do. But like if you were to do it, it would be like the full focus of the game. And like, this is obviously trying to be a genre, not like let's focus on like Blazing Lark does criminal heists. And so like, you would have to have a game with that level of focus to really justify stealth to do, Metal Gear or whatever, or Alien Isolation as an RPG with like elaborate rules for luring enemies away and like figuring out, behavior patterns and guard routines and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like the one page that they have right there is kind of like, it's not good because it like, I think a lot of GMs are going to trip up and try and implement them and not really understand them when you don't really need it at all. It's more of the skill of the GM to create tension in a stealth scene.
Yeah, I think that's something you have to be careful of with franchise games like this, or, we talked about The Witcher last year, is there's a very high, I don't know, I feel like there's a high probability that something like this or Witcher could be somebody's first RPG, like this or D&D, because it's like, oh, I've always wanted to try that out. I love Alien. I'm going to try to play this game with my friends. Maybe that'll be our way in.
I mean, not D&D.
No, I'm not saying D&D is a franchise game like that. I'm saying like somebody who's like, you have a hugely popular game like Witcher 3. I can see the Witcher RPG being like a gateway into the hobby. Same with this. And I think in that case, you have to be a little careful with the rules because there's a lot of stuff that's just sort of like tersely written as an example. As if you're an experienced player in GM, they're just giving an example of what might happen when a roll fails. But if you've never played before, you might take it literally.
Yeah.
And I think that could really like stifle new player play. It's like a thing you have to be careful with when you write these, I think, potentially entry level games.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, but like, I feel like in this case, and The Witcher, it's that it's not D&D per se, but substitute, like for Witcher, it was Cyberpunk. And for this, it's the Free League D6 system. It's like, we have this one, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When all you have is this one RPG system, everything looks like it could be a fit for this RPG system. I mean, the stress thing is perfect. Like it really adds to the game. And I think it's very thematic, and it definitely, the players really liked it. It was easy to pick up, but the stealth thing is kind of like, you could have cut that page. Later on, like I didn't even look at the starship. They have like more rules for different items and stuff like that. And I didn't use them too much because, like, for example, they point out in their own text that one of the special rules they have is that pulse rifle, there's a full auto rule. Like when you fire, a weapon like a pulse rifle, and you get a 1 on your stress dice firing it, you run out of ammo. So that, because androids don't get pulse rifles, they can never run out of ammo. And Tom was the android found his pulse rifle. And so I'm like, I'm just going to say you get this many attacks with this, Tom. You because I didn't want to use those rules.
Yeah.
And they point that out themselves, which I appreciate, but you need some sort of edge case special rules for an RPG, I feel. I don't know. Stealth is the one that I didn't really, the full auto was fine for the most part.
I don't know. Maybe it's also just what I like to see, but I think we sort of talked about this a couple days ago. Is I think this game has the one thing that I don't like in most games.
Yeah.
Where it's very simply written until you get to like combat gear and vehicles, and then it becomes a huge slog of edge cases and rules.
Yeah.
That I don't care about. I don't need shoving specific rules in my Alien game. Like, you can just have melee. I don't know. I just felt like I didn't need all of these combat subsystems when most of the combat should just be PCs getting ganked by xenomorphs.
I kind of ignored a lot of that stuff. I just kept it pretty basic. But I did, like, the first session, I didn't realize that xenomorphs have a speed rating, which means they get to act multiple times. Now, I did like the initiative system, which is, and they actually gave me a deck of cards that had like the deck of cards I'll talk about in a second, but like you get 10 cards. You could use playing cards, 1 through 10, ace through 10. And then you just draw them. Everyone draws a card, and that's your initiative. Lowest number goes first. But aliens, because they go faster, they can draw multiple cards depending on, like, if their speed is 2, they get to draw 2 cards. So the first session I didn't do that. The second session I did that, and it made a big difference. You're like, I'm drawing 2 cards. The player's like, wait, what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you find, so another thing that combat I was a little concerned about with this one is any game where you have sort of like an otherworldly plot enemy, like a xenomorph, it becomes weird to me when they just get stats. Like, this is something I always thought about, like Call of Cthulhu, that there's like just Cthulhu just has stats, and I can calculate like how many times I have to shoot Cthulhu to kill him.
Well, but a xenomorph isn't Cthulhu. Like,
I know, but
you are supposed to be able to kill a xenomorph.
Right, but I think it goes in the other direction where xenomorphs are as tough as they need to be for the plot. So like in Aliens, they just get mowed down. And I was curious if you had like a Colonial Marine with a pulse rifle, would they just mow down xenomorphs? Because xenomorphs have a lot of health and a lot of armor in this game.
Yeah, that's a good question. You could definitely change the stats of them depending on, like, one thing. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of going back to one of the discussions I want to have with this, which is like how you would run this game as a campaign. And like part of Alien, I feel, as a franchise, is like, what genre do you want to be? Because the first 2 movies are different genres. The first movie is a haunted house movie,
slasher. Yeah.
The second movie is like The Dirty Dozen. It's a it's a war movie.
Yep.
If you want to make a war movie thing, just say the xenomorphs are 1 hit point.
Sure.
Yeah, unless it's the Queen or some other badass guy.
Or they'll add like swarm rules or something, where you attack packs.
I mean, their stats aren't that big. Like their stat, it's not a D20 stat block. It's a handful of numbers. So
no, I was just thinking. So in combat, you roll an attack, and then you roll armor to reduce that damage. Right.
The close combat is different than because in close combat you can always block. If against humans you can always block, but against xenomorphs you can block if you're holding something to block them. In range combat you'd have to make a seek cover check.
Right, but once you take damage, you roll armor, and then
if you don't have armor, you're just hit.
Oh no, I'm thinking of like an alien that would roll 10 dice to soak damage.
Yeah, but they still need 6s, and they don't get to push.
Yeah, it's just something I was wondering about. If you didn't really run into it in your game, then I'm just
They did fire at, well, there's in Chariot of the Guards, they have these Promethean abominations, which
that's right.
Yeah, the abominations are not full-blown xenomorphs, but they still have 6 points, 6 dice of armor. And so like one player shot at one with a shotgun, and I'm like, all right, yep, he just absorbed it. Because you rolled 2 successes, I rolled 2 successes. So your shotgun does shit. Yeah. I was like, oh, and ran away. Which was, I feel, a very good genre moment. Yeah, I haven't looked at all the alien sets. So most aliens, like the standard alien, has like 10 dice of armor.
The soldier, there's a worker that's weaker, and there's a sentry that's like strong.
Well, the military weapons though have armor piercing though, which doesn't that negate armor or like have it or something?
That's true. I'm probably overthinking it, making a big deal out of nothing. But I was just saw these things with like so much armor. I don't know. It also just feels like a lot of rolling. I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're even in that case, it's like roll to hit. If the xenomorph doesn't see cover, which they usually won't, they get their armor roll, and that's it. So that's 2 rolls, assuming you don't negate it with the armor piercing. So that's not too bad. But I mean, they are D6 pools that are, going to be 10 dice or whatever.
Yeah.
Especially if you're stressed out Colonial Marine with like a good weapon. So you're rolling a pretty good amount of D6s at that point.
That's true. If you're laying into him with like a smart gun or something.
Yeah. Like in Chariot of the Gods, the players killed one abomination by hitting with a grappling gun and then yanking it. They was on the outside of the spaceship, or they were on the hull, and they hit with a grappling gun and then just yanked it off. And so it just started drifting into space.
Yeah, and stuff like that's a cool moment.
Yeah, and like in those kind of special one-hit kills are very like that's up to the GM, but like I feel like that's probably a better way of dealing with it. So yeah, but in terms of the rules, yeah, the gear does get a little crunchy, but that's pretty easily ignored. Most of the bonuses are you get bonus dice to do this, or you can do that, or you are allowed to do this, like heal injuries with a med kit or whatever. The only thing I didn't really look at all was like the spaceship combat rules. Did you look at that?
I also was like, no. Moved on. It has like stats for like the Marines APC and stuff like their dropship and the Nostromo.
I mean, occasionally that could be fun. Like, can a alien queen rip through an APC before it can drive away?
Yeah.
Like if you're doing that kind of game, that could be fun to do, but that's not sort of like a core gameplay feature. I mean, part of this is also sort of just like, here's all the stuff you remember from the movies, and we got it here in case you want to use it. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's like any given player of this game is going to use like a third of it, but like the developers don't know which third.
That's fair. I want to go back to your question you asked a few moments ago, though. Like, what kind of campaign would you want to run in this world? Because we sort of talked about this with Witcher, but one of the things that's of interest with a franchise game is, does it make you want to play it? Which The Witcher did not. Was sort of my conclusion of that episode. Yep. I think this one does, because I think there are a lot of interesting campaigns that you could do that have nothing to do with like really fighting a xenomorph. You could be a group of people like contracted by a corporation to go investigate. Oh, we hear Wayland is doing some weird shit. Go find it out. And then you sort of like end up sort of following leads, trying to figure out what's going on. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like they do actually have stats for non-alien aliens. Like they made up some new original, is like, because there's that throwaway line in Aliens, oh, is this another bug hunt, implying that they've been brought out to kill other things on some colonial planet. So I like, for me, I could see a couple different things. Like the first thing is, don't make it a horror game. It's the alien setting, but like it's Chinatown, but it's the players are investigators uncovering the big thing that Wayland Yutani is doing, the terraforming wars of LV California. Or just like the bioweapons, like what did they drop down? Forget it, Jake, it's Wayland Town. Yep. So you could do that. But if you're going to do horror though, like, obviously, unless the players have not seen the Aliens movies, if they haven't seen the Aliens, then you get to introduce them. But the average RPG player probably has seen the Aliens movies and is familiar with what they do. So like, that's not very scary. Even if it can kill your character, you're like, it's got acid for blood, it's going to eat me, or it's going to put eggs in me, I'm going to get the chest burster, it's going to be unpleasant. Yep. You would have to change it up. And they do that a little bit in Chariot of the Gods by having these abominations that they because people aren't as familiar with Prometheus
insidious as they are with aliens. These basically people who get infected by the black goo, and they turn in this half human, half alien hybrid thingy. One thing you could do is also, make up new original alien characters, OCs. And so think of other body horror concepts that you could come up with and just kind of work from there.
Sure. I think I was talking to Caleb a while ago about doing a game, and maybe I mentioned to you too, where you play a bunch of colonial rights activists, which I think are like probably the equivalent of people trying to unionize in the alien universe. And they're trying to investigate why the government nuked LV-426.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So like the other thing is maybe Wayland gets it and they manage to hybridize it, or perhaps the aliens just mutate in a different way on their own, or aliens in different planets, different ecologies evolve in different ways. So that's the thing, you have to take something you can't just use stock xenomorphs. Like I had an idea of like, one thing that sort of terrifies me is this face blindness, and this idea that like you just can't distinguish between different people, and then combining this with the idea of like cuckoos, which like lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and these birds raise the cuckoos. And so what if you had that, like where the xenomorphs infect these people so that they think the xenomorphs are people, and they're raising and helping them, and basically so you go on this planet, there's people there, and then they fucking like tie you up or feed you to aliens because they think that, that's just what we do, Junior needs his food. And so get a weird suburban people under the stairs vibe rather than
it's like have you ever seen a film, a Canadian film called The Pit, where like a kid finds a pit full of like little gremlins and raise them by like feeding townspeople to them?
Yeah, exactly. Something like that could be really good. But that's what I think that's what you have to do if you're doing this as campaign plays. Like take another thing I think that actually could have really improved this game is if they did what Knights Black Agents did and had like an alien creation kit. Because this is a franchise, maybe they wouldn't have had permission to be like, make your own alien. Like that, maybe the franchisee, the franchise holder would have been like, we gotta stick with the original aliens.
Yeah,
you're a GM, you can make up your own stuff, but I feel like you can't just use your own the same stuff over and over again. So but an alien creation kit would be a really cool idea. Maybe that would be a future supplement.
I can see them doing it because there is like a little bit of punch text that's like, there are other xenomorph types that have been rumored, but we haven't seen yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it is alien canon that they can take on all kinds of different forms depending on who the host body was.
Oh, yeah.
This is like the dog alien in Alien 3.
Yep. So if we had those, use the alien as sort of a springboard for your body horror, your biological based horror of choice.
I actually think what I would almost treat this as, not 100%, I get it, but it's almost like a low-tech light version of Eclipse Phase.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have the transhumanism, which is obviously like one of the core pillars of that game. But in terms of just like exploring different planets, dealing with body horror shit, future technology, kind of like retro tech, if you had something that you wanted to do, but Eclipse Phase gave players too many options, this might be this is
an easier setting for people to grow because it's like, there's spaceships, it's corporate dystopia in the future.
Yeah.
But you're still got to work for a living. That's easier to grow than Eclipse Phase. Okay, well, let's first tell you about, cortical stacks and then uplifts.
Let me tell you about the fall, kids.
Exactly. One thing I kind of want to do is actually probably I'm going to take some of the next Mothership adventure that I get, like the one that they're kickstarting right now about the dungeon that's fired by blame, probably run it in this setting or with these rules.
Yeah.
Because I really like Mothership's aesthetic and everything, but like the rules make characters too durable and not competent. And this characters are competent and very fragile.
Yes.
Far better for your sci-fi horror games. Yeah. Chariot of the Gods, by the way, which is going to be their first adventure that's published, is a pretty long adventure. It's definitely, it took us 5 hours of play and then another hour of like sort of pre-briefing where everyone picked characters and I explained the rules and all that.
Okay.
Did you read through it too?
Yeah, I skimmed through it. I don't think I read it as much detail as you did, but I definitely read through it.
It's got a lot of really good ideas in it. Like the pre-gens all have agendas, which are broken up by act. So at every turning point in the scenario, you can give them a little handout, a little things like, here's what you're trying to do now. You can ignore some of that. There's actually in the third act, there's a whole subplot about like a pirate ship trying to take over the ship that the players are on. And I totally ignored that. I didn't even use that.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be like, oh, we could do anything to get off this ship type deal. But yeah.
Because the basic players they're on another cargo ship, and then they're told to go check out this ship that is adrift. And guess what? It was a ship that was on a Prometheus type planet. They found some black goo, and it's all bad. And the players get on the drifting ship, and then their own ship blows up because their AI, the mother, is like, no, if this ship is allowed to remain, you'll want to escape. So bye, which is a great move. And the players are very indignant. It's like, why can't we stop it? You can't. It's just
fucking computers.
Yep, basically. Yeah, that's another big theme of the alien genre is just AIs fucking people over. Because if it's not an android or a ship AI, it's something bad's going on. I did like that everyone had their own agenda and everyone was keeping secrets from one another. There's a lot of, and then they make good use of the Prometheus abominations. So it's a good starting adventure. Don't use this as the way to start up a campaign with any of those characters, because there's basically you have to be very generous to let any of them survive.
Yeah, it does kind of have that issue where usually games launch with like a simple starting adventure that you can then, like you said, launch a campaign. But I think the way they like segregate outplay between cinematic and campaign unfortunately makes that kind of tricky to do with their one shots.
Yeah, that's true. There's actually another scenario in the book too, but that's it's a prequel to Aliens, where you're the colonists on Hadley's Hope, LV 426, and then it's the final hours or the final days. I only skimmed that. Did you take a look at that?
I also just skimmed it, but it was an interesting choice.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, we can't really do much with that after that. Like, everyone's going to die, because that's what happens in the canon.
Yeah. One thing I really liked about Chariot of the Gods as it's structured is I like that the bulk of the writing is like NPCs, players, and their sort of agendas, interactions, which are way more important to kind of improv and deal with players going off book, quote unquote.
Yeah, that's true.
The actual amount of writing that's just, here's what happens is very brief. It's roughly in just chronological order, and it's only a couple pages compared to all the other information. So it's really setting you up to just sort of tell a story on these ships with characters, which I really appreciate, instead of being a dungeon crawly style book of like, you go into room A1 and that branches off into room A2 or B1.
I did like that they tell you to give the players the full map of the ship that they're exploring, the Cronus, just as soon as they get access to it, because then the players can just look at the map and say, well, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to B deck and check out the armory. Or
totally reasonable. You can just pull it up on your ship's computer. And
no, that was a really good choice. And having the NPCs with clear agendas was good. The fact that the plot itself is only described in a couple of pages. So, and there's like a list of like mandatory events that have to happen, and then like optional events. And so I used some of the optional events. But yeah, it's you just kind of, as GM, you kind of figure out the pacing. One of the players got a little too complacent, like, well, let's see, what can I throw at them? And but obviously when players are dealing with a lot of shit, it's like, yeah, no, it's fine. My favorite moment was probably when like everyone there are 4 NPC crew members left, and they're of course all infected, so they're all basically eventually going to turn on the players, and like first they go berserk, and then they turn into like abominations. So like the players are like, well, we need to do a bunch of stuff and we need to all do it fast. Okay, so we have to split up. Well, whoa, no one's going out alone. All right, everyone go with a different NPC. Awesome.
Oh, no.
Awesome. So that worked out real well. Also, I had one player who got grappled, and he was carrying an incinerator, and then on his panic roll, he rolled berserk. So I'm like, that's not good for you, is it? Because you're like, from hell's heart, I burn at thee. So that was fun. Yeah, it's definitely a good adventure. For one thing I feel about this RPG, it's almost like they have the campaign play stuff, but I feel like they're expecting people to just do a couple one shots of it and move on.
Yeah.
Like, and to be honest, I'm fine with that, because there's so many RPGs out there. We can't all play 20 sessions of one game that we have. Sometimes you get your money's worth if you just play like a couple games out of it.
I definitely feel like this is one that I would have no problem just picking up and teaching people real quick and then just playing.
Yeah, it's definitely definitely really good for that. If you have your sci-fi horror idea that wouldn't fit in Eclipse phase, then like if you want to be in space, but you don't want your characters to have like nano swarms and like, robot copies of themselves and rail guns and plasma rifles and Jesus, a lot of shit, then yeah, this is a way to make it a little easier to run your event horizon or a scenario of choice. So some of the other things, I did get a bunch of accessories with that they're selling. So the dice are very nice. The 6s on the black dice have a little symbol on them, and then the 1s on the stress dice have a little face hugger on it, which I thought was a good touch. The cards, though, are interesting because they have 10 initiative cards, but they also have a list of inventory of items, like a pulse rifle picture on one side and then the stats on the other side, which are like 2 damage plus 2 on all your attack rolls. And, that's about it. But like that was good because I could hand out those cards as like, this is your weapon. If you want to hand to someone else, give them that card.
Yeah.
Then they had a bunch of the characters, all the characters, the player pregens and the NPCs statted out on cards. So you could actually reuse them as NPCs or pregens for your next card, because the character stats will fit on a single card, aside from their backstory, obviously. But if you just need the bare essentials, they'd all fit. It's not very much. So it's actually a pretty nice little accessory. It's obviously totally unnecessary, but like it's nice to have if you're willing to spend the extra cash. The GM screen was pretty good too. It was mostly, the panic roll I was consulting a lot, and the critical hit table later on.
Yeah.
That was it's actually, pretty good quality.
Yeah. I get that all that stuff is an extra cost, but I've come to appreciate some of those little supplemental tools, like just having rule cards. Like here's just a pack of cards that just have your stats on them. It's very lightweight.
I mean, the thing is, as an RPG company, I feel like that's a better way to support a product line than like cranking out unnecessary books. Put out decks of cards. That's fine. Like that, those are easy. Those are small, portable, cheaper to make, and they actually do enhance the play experience. And it's not another large ass book that like people may or may not read.
Yeah. So I think I probably, you probably bought a supplements book cost worth of like cards for Wrath and Glory and stuff, right?
Yeah. They have 6 decks for that, representing things like critical hits, campaign effects, psychic, powers, and that kind of thing.
Zweihander has also been doing that with having cards for like spells and stuff.
So I feel like that's a good way to help like keep the RPG. If you like this game, you should get those cards. Actually, Jason Brown's been running Wrath and Glory, not recorded, but for a different group. And he says he's borrowed my decks and he's using them. He says they're quite handy.
Yeah.
Overall, I do think this, if you like sci-fi horror, if you want a rules like game, it's actually, the core rule, despite the book being a big old hardback, the rules themselves are pretty easy to pick up, the base rules.
Yeah.
The campaign, like, I'm going to be real interested to see what they do for future cinematic scenarios that they publish. Yeah, just as a one-shot game, as an alternative to Mothership, I think it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's very, very playable to do light space horror, which is kind of my jam. I would actually like to do like a 4 to 6 session campaign of more little investigating like a mystery in this world, just to see how it plays. But overall, like even just as a one-shot game to play every so often with people, I think it's a worthwhile purchase. Yeah, I would like to try like a mini campaign, like 4 to 6 sessions. That'd be interesting because you could really like players like in Chariot of the Gods, everybody really got into role playing too. Like there were some arguments, there were a lot of tense moments between like the corporate guy and the captain trying to assert their authority, and other people like, we should do this, no, we have to do this, and that kind of thing. And it led to some really good moments in the scenario. So yeah, I think they give you a lot of good tools for that, because there are like players have literally a thing called an agenda that is something you should be like trying to do. And I think just having that one little, even like a sentence or two to think about, really can focus you on how to respond to situations and drive a lot of good role play. Yeah, I think I might try and write my own scenario with like agendas for characters at that point to sort of help guide role playing for some of these more, I wouldn't say scripted, but not sandboxy, but like plotted scenarios. So I'll probably keep that in mind, try and run that at some point. So something about, we've pretty much covered everything we want to say about Alien. Yeah. So thank you all for listening. We don't have any shout outs for this episode because I just wanted to get this out. But again, Night Clerk Radio, at Night Clerk Radio on Twitter. We'll have some teasers and whatnot up hopefully soonish. We'll try and launch it next year, early 2020. Stay tuned. I'm Ross Payton. I'm at Ross Payton on Twitter. I am Birk. I am at Birk McBirkinson, also on Twitter.
Thank you all for listening. If you want to hear more RPPR podcasts, check out patreon.com/RPPR. We have after hours. We have question for answers, Q&A focus podcast, hours and hours and hours of content. We also have early access for our actual play episodes. And you can actually play in online games run by the RPPR cast. You can join our Discord and back at the $10 level or higher, and tons of other unique rewards on our Patreon. So please check it out, and helps keep the podcast going. So thank you all for listening. Talk to you later.
Bye.